So we're here at Gettysburg National Military Park, and this is the visitor center. I call it the new visitor center because I remember the old one that they tore down. But this one's much nicer. Actually, it's much bigger, can handle more crowds. Okay, we've just entered Gettysburg National Cemetery. And this area was on the battlefield during the battle. If you see the fence behind the cannons over there, that cemetery is actually the Evergreen Cemetery. And the Evergreen Cemetery is why Cemetery Ridge has the name it has. Even though here on the National Cemetery is part of, it's up here on Cemetery Ridge too. So if you see the sign here, we'll just read it. The address was, so this is Gettysburg address, delivered about 300 yards from the spot along the Upper Cemetery Drive. And that's marked by the Soldiers National Monument. So 300 yards, you're looking back, that on the kind of on the other side of the trees over there is where it would have been. So pretty historic area. You can see the folks from Wreaths Across America have put wreaths on the markers here. This is just a small part of the cemetery. And I'm not even sure, but this might be where I end up one of these days, because I just love Gettysburg. So these are cannons from Hall's Battery of the 2nd Maine in this position in July 2nd, 1863. And I'll explain the significance of a lot of the monuments that, or excuse me, a lot of the stone markers that you see, the position markers, because the battle was very fluid. But I think this is a very peaceful area. So this is a soldier's monument. It's pretty much right at the spot that Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. And again, that's the Evergreen Cemetery. Those little stones right there on the ground, those are all unmarked graves. And the bigger stone that you see here in the foreground, right there, that's a state marker, and it'll have just a number of bodies listed. But through those trees, you can see an archway, and that's the entrance to the Evergreen Cemetery. And if you've ever looked at pictures of the battle or of Gettysburg right after the battle, you will see that. So that was here, and of course the cemetery was there during the battle. And just a kind of an interesting local side note, there's a guy that played on 2 Pittsburgh Steelers championship teams, Steve Corson, who was from Gettysburg. He went to Gettysburg High School, and he's actually buried in the Evergreen Cemetery. He was killed by a falling tree after he had retired from the NFL. But but you can get an idea of the number of unmarked graves, and then I'm gonna show you what one of these mass graves looks like. We'll just kind of zoom back in. So this is a mass grave from the state of Illinois. So 6 bodies. So they knew that these were Illinois troops, but they don't have any actual identification of them. And it may be that these graves were mass graves because they couldn't even tell who was who. Like, it was just a pile of people, pile of men. But every one of these bigger stones is a mass grave going all the way around the soldiers' monument. Now, keep in mind, none of the people that are going to be in these mass graves would have been Confederates. unless they were accidentally placed there. The townspeople did all this work, and after the battle, of course, and they definitely would not have buried any Confederates here. They would have buried them where they found them, in mass unmarked graves. So it's a little hard to see, but the sun's not favoring us right now. But it says, on this ground, Edgel's 1st New Hampshire Battery light artillery fired 353 rounds of ammunition on July 2nd and 3rd. And the statue was erected in July 3rd, 1912 by the state of New Hampshire. But the reason I stopped at this monument is to show some interesting little tidbits of the Army of the Potomac history. So you'll notice this little circle here on one side of the monument. Then you'll notice and this is supposed to be a shamrock right there. And then this other one is a diamond. Well, those are on here not for decoration, they're on here for a purpose. And what those 3 marks signify is that this battery supported 3 different Union Corps. And from the circle to the shamrock to the diamond, that would have been the 1st Union Corps, which had been commanded by General John Reynolds, although he was killed on the first day of the battle. So I think Abner Doubleday, that Abner Doubleday that invented baseball, I think he assumed the role of Corps commander for the remainder of the battle. Then 2nd Corps, right here, that was Winfield Scott Hancock's Corps. And then 3rd Corps, I'd have to look it up, to be honest with you. But those marks were put into place under the instruction of Joseph Hooker when he was the commanding general of the Army of the Potomac, and it was his chief of staff, Daniel Butterfield, who actually designed them. And so as you go around go around the Gettysburg battlefield, you will notice tons of monuments that will have those symbols. And I'll show you some of the other ones if I see some examples, but there's like a Maltese cross, and there's some triangles of other corps that fought here. But yeah, so the monuments, more than just what's on the plaque, you can learn a lot about what was going on at a given point in the battle. Okay, everybody, we're back. We're up here on Little Round Top, and that monument you see directly in front of us is a Pennsylvania monument up here on Little Round Top. But if I zoom out, beyond it, way down there, you can see another notable monument. That's the Pennsylvania Memorial. That was also erected by the state of Pennsylvania, people of Pennsylvania. It's the largest monument on the battlefield, and we'll go down there and see that in a little bit, but that's down in the Union Center. But I want to pan across the battlefield. So this is basically the higher end of where we are, our vantage point, the higher end of the Union lines. And then we would have been towards the Union left. But as we pan across and you see out there, and I apologize, but the red barns, beyond that is where Seminary Ridge was, where the Confederate lines were. And we pan across, and this is a lot of the fighting on July 2nd. This is when troops from Longstreet's Corps with General Lafayette McLaws in the van were trying to turn the Union left. And as I come across here, you're going to notice a giant pile of stones. That is the famous Devil's Den. And for obvious reasons, it provided a lot of protection. But basically the fighting raged here, and as I pan farther around, what you're going to see to our left is the far end of the Union left, and that high point there beyond that other monument is Big Round Top, or as I call it, Round Top. And that was the far end of the Union left, and that's where the 20th Maine actually was over there and drove back Alabama troops from John Bell Hood's division of the of the Army of Northern Virginia. And we're going to take a look at some other stuff that's kind of like, I call it battlefield minutia. here in a minute. Okay, so here's some infantry regiment position markers. And so this one right here, this is the right flank of the 140th New York Infantry. Now sometimes there's a date. Somebody left a penny. There's no date on that one. But so this is the right flank, so the far right side. And these are usually lined up the way the regiment would have been lined up. So if I stand here and I just look straight across over there, I bet in a couple of minutes we'll be able to find the left flank. And it might not be very far, because sometimes these regiments had already been decimated by the time this battle started, because they'd already been through, like, you know,
2 days.
Manassas battles, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Antietam.
And 2 days here.
And this was the second day here, right? And a lot of times units are taken off the line. But here's another marker, and we're gonna look and see which way it's facing. So this was the left flank of the 91st and PV on this battlefield always means Pennsylvania Volunteers. So the 91st Pennsylvania Volunteers, this was their left flank. But here's the interesting thing. They face the way that the marker is. So if I have the marker here, the face is out front here. So they would have been facing this direction, and their right flank, their right flank would go up over that ridge a little bit. And again, we're up on Little Round Top. So let's go see if we can find the right flank of the Pennsylvania Volunteers, and we'll see if we can find the left flank of the 140th New York Volunteers. So let's walk over here and see what we find. So here we are at the left flank of the 140th New York Infantry, and it's really it's not even 100 yards to the other. But let me also show you, I'll show you the monument that's erected right in the middle of their lines to their okay, so this is the monument to the 140th New York Infantry. It says patriotism. This is the seal of the state of New York. You notice on top it's got the Maltese Falcon. That's the cap symbol for the Union 5th Corps. And then it says 140th New York Infantry, 3rd Brigade, 2nd Division, 5th Corps, July 2nd and 3rd, 1863. And then this is, excuse me, and then it says valor up there, and then it says fraternity. This is the regimental commander, Patrick O'Rourke. He was killed up here on July 2nd. No, you're fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then it says duty on this side. Number engaged 526, casualties 26, killed 89 wounded, 18 missing. And so right in the middle of that line that we saw, that just 100 yards, they would have had men behind all these rocks and everything, but this was heavily contested ground. You see down there, there's going to be, that's a monument to another regiment, and the commanders would have placed their lines. They would have got shoulder to shoulder and tried to stand their ground. Okay, so I saw it. We're getting over here. I think we're going to be able to find the right flank of the 91st Pennsylvania Volunteers, standing over here by the statue of General Governor K. Warren. And yep, here it is. Now they must have been, I almost feel like they were kind of bowed, like they were in like a hook, because of the way this monument's facing, or this marker's facing, and the other marker, it feels like they were facing this little area, so like they were here and they were like going like up the ridge here by the monument, and then turned a little bit like we saw them facing on that other marker. And then this one, which isn't really facing, but then this is the 146th New York Infantry, their left flank. And of course, if we go back over here, I bet you those monuments are for that regiment. And again, that Maltese the Maltese Falcon sign, that's the Union 5th Corps, General John Sedgwick's corps. But let's talk a minute about General Warren here. General Warren was the engineer of the Union, the Army of the Potomac, and he's the one that came up here. And this statue is, and the placement is based on a famous drawing I think maybe Alfred Woad did for Harper's Weekly. But General Warren comes up here. He surveys the battlefield because he was the engineer. He surveys the battlefield and realizes this is a place of great strategic importance, and he starts getting troops up here. And he really did save the battle for the Union by realizing the strategic importance of this area. So this is the Pennsylvania Memorial, and it's the biggest on the battlefield, the largest. Of course, it was erected to honor people from Pennsylvania who were involved in the battle. Although you will also see the name of Andrew Curtin, C-U-R-T-I-N, on this monument. He was not a soldier. He was actually the governor of Pennsylvania in July of 1863. But if you notice up on the top and all around, you see names of all these Union officers who were part of the Union Army or present here. Meade, of course, was the commanding general of the Army of the Potomac at Gettysburg. Reynolds was John F. Reynolds, Union 1st Corps commander, who was killed on the first day of the battle. But along the base here is our listings of all the regiments and units that fought in the war. I think in the war, not just at the battle here, but in the war from Pennsylvania. But there were about 25 or 26,000 Pennsylvanians that fought at Gettysburg. So it's not inconsequential. So there's the statue of Abraham Lincoln, and here's the statue of Governor Curtin. And you can see it says under Lincoln there, it says the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in honor of her sons who on this field fought for the preservation of the Union July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. And then it says under Governor Curtin, it says Pennsylvania at Gettysburg, 69 regiments of infantry, 9 regiments of cavalry, 7 batteries of artillery, total present 34,530, which is higher than the number I just gave, but I've seen different numbers. I mean, this one's written in stone, so maybe it's the authoritative one. Killed and mortally wounded 1,182, wounded 3,177, missing 860. But as we go in here, you can see that, and by the way, you can't, I don't think we'll be able to go up on the top, but there is like this large balcony. But this was erected in 1907, it looks like, and it was approved, and it's got some other information. But all these names are names of people that fought here. These are plaques for different cavalry regiments with the names of all of the soldiers. So this is it's an extensive and pretty cool monument. But you know what? The gate's open. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna go up. I thought it might be closed, but it's not. By the way, this is like copper or something on the walls. This says If you deface this monument, you'll be arrested and liable to a fine of $500. Again, these are copper, hammered copper. So that's looking at Round Top, Little Round Top. This is looking to the east. And then this is looking down this road and really about where you see this monument and grove of trees, monument and grove of trees, that's really where the area called the Angle is. And just to put it in perspective, if I zoom out a little bit, this area over here, that's where the National Cemetery is. So it's this ridge that comes down, and the Angle is kind of like the high point of the Confederacy. It's where the troops came across. This farm out here is called the Cadore Farm, and the Cadore Farm, like the Confederate troops would have come basically across the front of that, climbed fences, knocked fences down, and really pitched into the center of the Union lines in this area. But if you look off past that row of trees right in front of us, I'm zoomed as far as I can, but if you notice, trying to get my finger out there, it's hard to see. Hold on a second. I'm gonna try to stabilize this. That monument out there is on Seminary Ridge. That is the Virginia Monument, and on the very top of it is Robert E. Lee on horseback. So that's about the point where the Confederates came out of the woods and started across. And the thing that's interesting about, and there have been studies done on this, but there's a lot of evidence that the Confederates, and in particular Lee, misread the terrain of this battlefield. And you can see this battlefield is quite enormous. As far as you can see is part of the battlefield. But what happened was Lee didn't understand. When you look at it from there, and I've been over there too, it looks pretty flat coming across here. What you don't really realize until you walk this terrain is there are several different swales that in some instances hid an entire regiment of infantry. So the Confederates, from the time they left those woods, were getting assaulted, and there were pickets out that were challenging them. They spent a lot of time because they really didn't reconnoiter the area that they were going to make this charge across, and they didn't understand that they were going to face a lot of obstacles. And they also, as they came across, got misaligned, and they actually did flanking movements in formation in front of Union guns. And those were, of course, very deadly and disastrous. But as we go around to the front here, kind of back where we started, we're back here on the Union lines. You can see the cannon, and this road basically kind of tracks the Union lines. Virginia Monument, and then see if we can see across the field. There's the Cadore Farm off in the distance. This is the direction that Pickett and Pettigrew headed on the afternoon of July 3rd, 1863. So just to give you a little more perspective, so I showed you the Cadore Farm from the Pennsylvania Monument a second ago. So that's the farm. And then if I pan over here to the right, and again, I apologize, this is not the best camera, but off in the distance there, that's that Virginia monument that I was talking about with Robert E. Lee on top. So the Confederates were told to head for a grove of trees that was off in the distance. These are the trees. And candidly, these are not the trees that were here then, but these are the trees that are located where those trees were. And you can see that was a section of woods. That's why it's fenced off. They don't want souvenir takers. But this is basically the center of the Union lines. And if you can see these rock walls here, just over here, like right along here, if you look, it kind of turns at an angle along here. And that is what is known as the angle. And that was really the point where my hands are so cold I can't zoom out. This is like where the high tide of the Confederacy is right in this area. They came across this field and were repulsed. It took a while, and it was a lot of fighting, and you know, it was mayhem. It was mayhem, and you know, it changed this place forever, of course. But this is just a great place to visit and reflect, and you could see the position of these cannons and the limbers, and you know, it was close quarters. It was violent. It was chaotic, and in the end, it signaled the last invasion. What happened here was the end of the last invasion of the Confederacy into the Union territories, and it really was, along with an event that would happen just a day later, a long way away in Vicksburg, Mississippi, on July 4th, 1863. Grant accepts General John Pemberton's surrender of Vicksburg after a long siege. These two events, on the 3rd, culminating here on the 3rd in Gettysburg, and then in Vicksburg on the 4th, were basically the death knell of the Confederacy. It was over at that point, and it was just a matter of thousands more people dying needlessly to get back to the status quo. So anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this. This is my co-driver Paul's first time ever coming here to the battlefield in Gettysburg. I think he said he passed through one time, but it's the first time being here on the battlefield proper, and he was very excited to do it. So I was glad we were able to do it today. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Tim Travels. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Terry again. Got a little bonus footage here for you. This is Robert E. Lee's headquarters. And I will tell you from living in this area that up until very recently, and by the way, this is not part of the battlefield itself. This property was recently bought by a charity called the Civil War Trust. But what happened is on this land right here, there was a very good restaurant and brewery called the Appalachian, I think it's called Appalachian Mountain Brewery, and they basically sold their buildings and property so that this area could be restored. And by the way, I should say I don't think they used this building. They had another facility like right here in this area, but they sold it to the Civil War Trust. And Civil War Trust, like I said, is a charity that preserves battlefields. But I want to just set the scene here. So if you look, we're looking to the west, okay? And I'm going to zoom out here, and I apologize again, but as I zoom out, you can see a statue out there, a man on horseback. That is a statue of John Reynolds, Major General John Reynolds. Now, just to the left of him, there's another statue, and it looks like it's kind of next to a tree. to the left there, and that's a man on foot, which is ironic because that's the statue of John Buford, who was the Union cavalry commander whose troops first engaged Henry Heth's division of Confederate infantry that were coming up the road here, which still is the Chambersburg Road. So west over those mountains is Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. This is the place where the battle first started. And then as you go along to the south here, and I'm going to zoom out, sorry. We talk about Seminary Ridge. So as I pan around here, that's Lee's headquarters. But the buildings just on the other side of the road there, that's the Lutheran Seminary. And that's what this ridge is named for. And yeah, so this was where Lee had his headquarters the whole time. But again, there's so much more that I just don't have a chance to show you on this trip. The battlefield is enormous. But just to give you an idea, we were over on Little Round Top. I don't think I can even see it from here, but it's definitely it's probably 5 miles away. So this is a battlefield. These weren't tanks. These were men on foot. But anyway, if you've never been here to Gettysburg, come for a minute, come for a week, but just come and visit this. You won't regret it. So I hope you enjoyed this little bonus footage here.